Hello and welcome to Inside Homebrewing. I'm Jay Thomas, and this is an American wheat beer I brewed up about 8 weeks ago. It's been in the bottle 2 weeks. It's perfectly carbonated and good to go. Making this beer, it was so easy. It was just I think it was about 55% wheat malt and 35% or 45% whatever of Pilsner malt and just some Willamette hops. So I decided to make a video on how easy it is to do a all extract batch of beer. You know, going back to basics. 35 years ago when I first started brewing, there were no kits. It was just we got our supplies from a guy who was selling beer making stuff out of his house and his garage. That was back in Boulder, Colorado in about 1985 or something like that. Anyway, things have progressed a lot in the world of homebrew, and now we can just go and buy a kit. So I looked online. I went on to morebeer.com. Oh, that's real good. I found an American wheat beer kit. It's a Palmer's Brewing Solutions Palmer's Premium Beer Kit. We'll open this up and see what we got here. Let's see. A couple different instruction things. General brewing instructions. Recipe instructions for Kent's Hollow Leg American Wheat. Okay. Looks like 3 pounds Bavarian wheat, dry malt extract. Another 3 pounds Bavarian wheat, dry malt extract. What is this? Half pound, 8 ounces of dry malt extract, Pilsen Light. See, corn sugar, dextrose. That's going to be, let's see. That says it's for bottling the beer. That's perfect. About 5 ounces for a 5-gallon batch. Will work out. We got 3 bags of hops. Willamette pellet hops. 3.8 alpha acid, Willamette pellet hops, 3.8 alpha acid, Centennial pellet hops, 8.1 alpha acid, and lastly, Cellar Science Cali Premium Beer Yeast. This classic American ale strain, famous for its clean, neutral flavor and its ability to be used in any style, emphasizes malt and hops, attenuates well. So get that put back, and then we're going to read the instructions. On this batch, we're just going to follow the instructions and go from there, seeing how easy or how difficult it is. Sometimes these instructions are not all that clear. So we're going to find out what this one says. We have general brewing instructions, required equipment, overview of the Palmer method, brewing instructions. On the back it goes through all the brewing instructions. General equipment, 5-gallon pot, I got that sitting on the stove ready to go. A thermometer, I have that. 6-gallon fermentation bucket or carboy, I have a 5-gallon carboy. We may have to adjust the process a little bit, the amounts of water. Bottling, siphoning, bottling bucket, got that. 48 12-ounce bottles, got that. Bottles and capper, got that. But for today, all we're going to need is my carboy, a blow-off tube. We're going to use a blow-off tube. I'll show you the importance of that later on. Carboy, blow-off tube. We've got an airlock goes with that, and that's it. Oh, and a way to chill off the wort. You can just leave it sit overnight. We'll go over all that later. But really, all you need to make beer is something to ferment the beer in, and a pot to big enough, large enough boil kettle to boil that up in. So very easy. Here we go. We're going to just start with the instructions. We're going to go through this step by step and make our first batch of beer. So going over the instructions, okay, we're going to dissolve the malt extract into 3 gallons of cold water and bring to a boil. Wort A. Okay, word A, that's what we're gonna, word A is dissolve the malt extract into 3 gallons of cold water and bring to a boil. Word A is 3 pounds of the Breeze Wheat DME. Okay, we're gonna get on that right now. So I have this filled up with 3 gallons of cold water. You're also gonna want a spoon of some variety to get that stirred in there. My brew kettle has a etchings on it, so I know where we're at for volume wise. I'll get this poured in there and get it dissolved and turn on the heat. This dry malt extract is very powdery and dusty. Try not to breathe that dust. Get that all in there. Turn on the heat. Here we go. And get that stirred in there. If you're dissolving it later on, I'm sure I hadn't read through all the instructions, but later on we'll be dissolving dry malt. I'm guessing we'll be dissolving it in after the boil, the rest of the extract. It's going to really clump up bad, but we'll see what happens when we get to that point. So just stir this all in. As it's warming up, we'll bring it to a boil and see what the instructions say after that. This should be a very quick and easy brew day. So while that's heating up, it shows on the instructions later on we're going to be adding the pellet hops. It shows you just dump them right into the boil, which is fine. You can do that. I prefer not to. I don't want the hop particles in my, freely in the beer as it, especially as it's fermenting. It usually, a lot of it will drop out, but I like to have it as clean as possible. I use hop bags and no hop pellet pieces. It dissolves into teeny little pellets or teeny little particles. I don't want any of that in my beer at all. So what I'm going to do, I recommend you buy some hop socks of some variety. These are the best I found out there. These are made by, I bought these from brewinabag.com. So what I do is I just take the pellets. We got 2 additions of 3 hops with 2 additions. So I just take the, this is the Willamette. This will be our first addition of hops. Just pour that into the bag. Then all the hop, none of the particles are going to get through this bag. If there is, it's going to be very little. So you just take that bag, just quick tie it up, and do the same for the second edition of hops, which is just going to be a steeping hop. It's 2 different kinds of hops, but they can all just be in the same bag since they're being added at the same time. Let's pour those in there. And just by the volume, it's obvious which one you're going to pour in first. It's going to be the 1 ounce of the Willamette hops. Just set those aside for now. And another thing which you may want to do is keeping record. It's a brew day sheet for extract based beers. It's just got all the information. You add all your information to it just so you can keep track of it. Or you can go onto brewersfriend.com and make up your own recipes and put all the information, and it'll store that information for you. But just for grins, we decided to we're going to fill out one of these brewer sheets. Got the date on there, and then it's going to have the statistics, the specific gravity and stuff, and just what is in there. So and just fill that out. Like I said, brewersfriend.com. You can download this. You can print this up for free. And I believe on Brewer's Friend you can also get about 10 recipes, 5 or 10 recipes for free without paying for them, and it will store your information on their website. So it took about 5 minutes for that to get totally dissolved. As it's heating up, we're just waiting for it to start a boil, and then see what the directions say. Okay, so once that starts to boil, you're going to want to stir it to keep it from boiling over. You can see the foam is now getting a little out of control. It can make a mess, and it's a sticky mess all over the stove top. So turn down the heat a little bit. Keep it contained. Then once that foam falls back down in there, we'll continue boiling and see what the directions say. Wait 15 minutes after reaching a boil, and then add the first addition of hops, 1 ounce of Willamette pellets. Okay. Adjust the heat. So we're going to let this boil 15 minutes. Turn the timer on. And once the timer goes off, I'll add those hops. So there we go. It's been boiling now for 15 minutes. We shut off the alarm. Timer off. It's been able to keep a nice rolling boil going. Now it says to add the first addition of hops. So that's the 1 ounce of Willamette hops. Just drop that right in there. If you don't have a bag, you just pour them straight in out of the hop, or out of the little package it came in, right into the boiling wort. Stir it up. It may want to foam up again whenever you add hops. So just get that stirred in and see what the instructions say. So the instructions say, wait 15 minutes, add the 1 ounce of Willamette hops. Okay, we just did that. At the conclusion of 1 hour boiling, turn off the heat and add 1 ounce Willamette and 1 ounce Centennial hops. Stir and then add the components of Wort B. Wort B would be the rest of the extracts, which is 3 pounds of the Bavarian wheat and ½ pound of the light Pilsen extract. So it's not really clear if you boil it 1 more hour, but it sounds like you boil it for 45 more minutes. So I'm going to turn the timer to 45 minutes and go from there. So the total boiling time would be 1 hour. It's already boiled 15 minutes. So now, skipping ahead, while that's boiling for its 45 minutes, I'm going to deal with the yeast. We'll read what the instructions say. Rehydrate. This is the main instructions for this particular beer kit. It says rehydrate and pitch. Rehydrate and pitch the yeast according to the general brewing instructions. On the general and brewing instructions, it says pitching the yeast. Open the yeast package and pour into 1 cup of warm water. Allow the yeast to sit for 15 minutes before stirring. Stir the yeast gently and allow it to thoroughly rehydrate 10 to 30 minutes before adding it to the fermenter. For best results, the wort should be at the recommended fermentation temperature before pitching the yeast. Pour the yeast into the fermenter and seal it up. Rock the fermenter back and forth. Okay, anyway, for rehydrating the yeast. Okay, the yeast package itself says used Cali yeast can be sprinkled directly onto the surface of the wort for good results. However, proper hydration helps ensure a healthy fermentation and is strongly recommended for beers with a starting gravity above 1.060. This will fall a little bit below that, but anyway. To hydrate yeast, first sanitize yeast pack and scissors. Use 1/2 cup of sterilized tap water between 85 and 95 degrees. Sprinkle yeast onto the water. Allow slurry to stand undisturbed for 20 minutes and then swirl. Use small amounts of water to to adjust within 10 degrees. So I'll just get about a half a cup of water. That's a little more, that's fine. And then just nuke that.
Yeah.
So here's where one part where a thermometer is pretty crucial. You don't want this water too hot. I nuked it for about a minute and it's just over half a cup. Anyway, it says to add the yeast between 85 and 95 degrees. It's probably a lot hotter than that. Oh yeah, I'm at 130 degrees. We'll let that cool down and add the yeast. If you added the yeast at this temperature, it would definitely kill the yeast and your beer's not going to ferment at all. Do not add the yeast while the beer or while the water is too hot or while the beer wort is too hot. If you don't cool it down enough and you add this yeast slurry into the beer wort, it's just going to kill the yeast and nothing's going to happen. It's not going to ferment. So if you noticed, the probe of the thermometer, I used rubbing alcohol onto it just to make sure everything is sterile and sanitized. I'll just put a little cover on that right now. So we'll check the temperature now that it's cooled off for a while. We still got a little bit of time of boiling time. This is at 88 degrees. The package says 85 to 95 degrees. We're good to go. So what we do is I use alcohol because it's pretty much almost instant, not quite, but almost instant sanitation of the package. Wipe that off, and it says to sanitize the scissor. So we'll spray that. Cut it open and sprinkle the yeast. Into the water. So just pour that on there, and it says allow slurry to stand undisturbed for 20 minutes and then swirl. Use small amounts of water to adjust the temperature within 10 degrees of work temperature before pitching. So we're just going to cover that back up. A little alcohol on here. Cover that up. And just set that aside to let it rehydrate before it gets before it gets stirred. And we're good to go. And so now we still have 17 minutes of boil time. Just patiently waiting. Easy, easy so far. So the alarm just went off a few seconds ago, so we read what this says. At the conclusion of 1 hour boiling, turn off the heat and add 1 ounce of Willamette and 1 ounce Centennial hops. Oops. It's still, I forgot to shut it off. So we add the hops and add the components of wort B. Wort B is 3 pounds of Briest DME, wheat DME, and a half pound of the Pilsen DME. After the boil, with the heat turned off, stir in the ingredients of wort B into the pot. Then slowly, while stirring, avoid clumping, make sure that they are thoroughly dissolved. Allow the hot wort to rest for 10 minutes to pasteurize the wort B ingredients. Okay, so we'll just pull this off the heat right now. Okay, we got that off the heat. That shut off. We are at I don't know if you can see that, but I add about 2 1/4 gallons, just over 2 1/4 gallons, just under 2 1/2 gallons left after the boil. It started off just over 3 gallons. 3 gallons of water plus the extract. So we'll get that, we'll get the hops in there right now. So as the instructions say, we add the hops and stir that in. Okay, that was easy enough. So then now we're going to add the components of wort B, the other 2 bags of dry malt extract. Now we'll just cut this bag open and add these 3 1/2 pounds of dry malt extract. The steam will make that clump up like that. That's okay. I'm not worried about that little bit. I'm not going to try scooping it out of there. And then the other bag here. And like the instructions say, you just leave it for about 10 minutes after it's dissolved to make sure it's all been sterilized by the hot wort. It makes kind of a lid on there. So it's going to take a while to stir that in and get it totally dissolved. A little more difficult maybe than when it was cold. So just keep stirring that in. Once it's all dissolved, I'll set the timer for 10 minutes and go from there. So that raised the volume a little bit between adding the hops and adding the DME. So we're over 2 1/2 gallons, closer to 2 3/4 gallons. Everything's looking good. This is real easy. Alright, so the alarm just went off. It's been sitting for 10 minutes. It's all dissolved. It's good to go. It's all pasteurized now. That dry malt extract we put in there. I have the wort chiller. It was sanitized with the other components, just soaking in a bucket with some sanitizer. So that's good to go. And I'm going to put the beer over here and run some water through here to cool it down to about, I'm not sure what my water temperature is. It's probably around 70 degrees. We'll get that to around 70 degrees and then it's going to go into the fermenter. So with this type of wort chiller, I got the hose running in from outside. Goes through the wort chiller and into the beer wort. Then I'm having that drain into the sink. Without making a mess. But anyway, kind of stir that around a little bit as that cool water is going through the coils. That will cool off the beer. Here's another reason why you need a thermometer. I'll put the thermometer in the in there and see where we're at. It's going to take a while to cool it down to about 70 degrees. Then my water temperature is also, or the water I'm adding to the fermenter is around 70 degrees. So the instructions say to add 3 gallons, I think it was 3 gallons, of cold water into the carboy and then put the beer on top of that. Well, I have a 5-gallon carboy, not a 6 or 6.5 gallon, whatever it said. So I'm going to cool off the beer to around 70 degrees. I'm going to put that into the carboy and then top it off with water up to the 5-gallon line. And then I'll thoroughly mix that. I'll show you how it gets aerated / oxygenated. And I'll take a sample for the original gravity. and go from there. So right now we're just going to let this cool off and go from there. So I've had the chiller running now for a little while. It looks like I've found my the temperature of my tap water is just a hair under 70 degrees. So that's fine, because I'm going to ferment it at about 65 degrees. So I'm going to stop chilling it and get it into the fermenter right now. So now that's cooled off, it's time to put that into the fermenter, whether you have a carboy like this or a bucket or any other type of fermenter. Very important, anything that comes in contact with the beer wort post-boil must be sanitized. The inside of this jug has thoroughly been sanitized. This hose has been sanitized. The outside of the hose, I have some alcohol on this. I'll just wipe that off, put that in there, and open up the valve. Let that beer run in there. As it falls, it's aerating the beer, which is good. And as that's doing that, I can also take out the hop bags. Oh. You don't have to take out the hop bags as it's draining, it's just an option. Kind of let those drip on out. And if you don't have hop bags, that's fine. But anyway, I use these hop bags so I don't have to worry about hop particles in my beer. And it looks like we're going to be adding about 3 gallons we'll be adding about 3 gallons of water to this beer. It's under 2 gallons after I take out the hop bags. No worries, there's nothing to worry about. Making beer is super easy, especially like this, all extract. Very easy, there's nothing to worry about. It's not going to get infected, you don't have to worry about that. As long as everything is clean and sanitized post-boil. Get that out of here. And just let that continue draining. And put the lid on there. Easy. There we go. 5 gallons of beer, give or take a little bit. And I'll let the foam settle down a little bit and then aerate it. So now I got that filled up, maybe a little too full, but that's okay. I'm not going to worry about that. And the directions say, pitching the yeast, open the yeast packet, pour. For best results, the wort should be at the recommended fermentation temperature before pitching the yeast. Pour the yeast into the fermenter and seal it up. Rock the fermenter back and forth for several minutes to aerate the wort with the air in the headspace. Aeration of the wort immediately prior to pitching will provide oxygen in the yeast it needs to grow and conduct a successful fermentation. This is the only time in the brewing process where you want to expose the beer to oxygen. That's very important. After fermentation, exposed to oxygen. Later exposure to oxygen after fermentation will only cause the beer to oxidize and taste stale. So right now, I'll put the cap on there. I'll put the cap on there and the hose, the blow-off hose, and then shake it up to get it to oxygenate / aerate, and then I'll pitch the yeast. So I have a sanitized stopper, sanitized airlock, sanitized hose. So I take the hose I'll get a close-up of that here in a little bit, but take that hose and fit it on to make sure it's sanitized. Everything must be super sanitized that comes in contact with the beer. So I'll just take this, wipe that off, wipe off the inside of that. And like I said, that's alcohol that flashes and dries pretty quick. Cap it off so that it's sealed. And then for oxygenating it, aerating it, what I do, you know, at least for this, for a carboy, have the blow-off tube up like this, shake it up, and that lets air flow in and out of there. But it has been aerated quite a bit. So what I'm going to do this for a minute or so, and then I'll, hopefully it'll be mixed up good enough where I can take a gravity sample, an accurate gravity sample. Like I said, it's not that important. We know about where it's going to be as per the directions. So here's the yeast. It's still got some dry yeast on top of it. So I'll stir that up. And some of it dried in, or dropped in clumps to the bottom. It's been well over 20 minutes, but it didn't soak up all the, it didn't hydrate all the dry yeast, but that's nothing to worry about, no big deal. So get this all dissolved in here. Stir that around. And I'm going to sanitize the funnel to pour that into the to pour this yeast into the beer. Give it a quick stir and call it a day, and we'll get this out into the ferment chamber. So I had a couple technical difficulties with the camera. Anyway, the gravity reading was supposed to be 1.053. My reading came out at 1.040, which I contribute to it not being mixed because I put the thick beer wort into it, into the carboy. I added water on top of it. I don't think it was thoroughly mixed. I mean, it should be right, real close to what it says. Anyway, a sample. Tastes like beer where it should. It's very good. Anyway, and then I added the yeast. I took the slurry. I poured it into there, making sure everything was totally sanitized and clean. It's poured in there, shaken up, ready to go. I'm going to put this out in the garage right now into my ferment chamber and go from there. So that's all put away. I have it in the ferment chamber. The blow-off tube, see how that works? It's in the stopper. The tube is coming up over the stopper, so it's just a one-way valve. It's gonna, if any foam comes up, it's gonna come up, blow out through the tube, and into the jar of water. You can add a little sanitizer to there if you want. It doesn't matter. It's a one-way valve. The water is not going to go back into the sanitizer unless you have the beer cools off a lot, where it's going to have a vacuum effect. Anyway, the beer foam, it's going to foam up quite a bit. It's going to blow out into the jar, and it'll catch into the jar. If the jar overflows, very important, you catch that into a pan. Anyway, that's all ready to go. I'm just going to leave it alone now and check on it either later on tonight or probably tomorrow and see if it's fermenting the way it should. I don't foresee any problems. There's nothing to worry about. It's just beer. So we're good to go. I have the fermentation chamber set at, Let's see, it's at set at 65 degrees. The temperature inside there is 64 degrees. The beer is probably at about 70 degrees, but I have it just, it's not in a thermal well, so it's not going to cool off. It's just going to, the temperature is just going to maintain pretty much, and the beer will cool off very slowly. I don't think it's going to have a problem with sucking up the beer from the jar. I'm not worried about it. So we'll just leave that alone and go from there. So now that's sitting in there, gonna ferment in the ferment chamber. If you don't have a ferment chamber, what you want to do is try to find a place in the house that's going to maintain the temperature within the parameters of whatever given yeast you have. Like this one, I don't remember what it said, but 60 something degrees to 70 something degrees. So it's set at 65 degrees. So anyway, that'll be fine, and it's now at around 70 degrees, I'm guessing. So it's all going to work out just fine. The beer will warm up as it ferments. As the yeast is doing its thing, it's going to warm up the beer a little bit, maybe as much as 5 degrees. So you want a nice cool spot. You know, 70 degrees, 72 degrees is going to be about the max temperature, you know, outside air temperature around the beer that you want, because it will warm up to 75, 70 something degrees. So anyway, just keep that in mind when you find a spot. Keep it out of the sunlight. You don't want the beer to be sunstruck or light struck. That'll cause it to skunk. Also, inside lighting, fluorescent lights and stuff like that can also cause it to be light struck. You don't want that at all. So on this beer sheet, I did not get a original gravity reading. So they estimated that to be at a 1.053. So that's just what I'm going to write down. I'm not worried about it. You know, it's just making beer. We're not making rocket fuel to go to Mars or anything. So you don't have to worry about the beer. Just leave it alone. If you're fermenting in a bucket, you can't see what's going on there. You'll be able to tell by the blow-off tube or your fermentation lock. You'll see bubbles coming up on it. Don't open it up. Don't look at it. I mean, you can open it up, especially when it's fermenting. You can open it up because you're going to have positive pressure, CO2, pushing out any air ingress. So, but just leave it alone. You don't have to look at it. You don't have to do nothing. It takes care of itself. Beer is very forgiving. It's hard to mess up a batch of beer unless you open it up and start looking at it and messing with it and worrying about it. Don't worry about it. Just leave it alone. It's all going to be fine. So we're just going to leave that sit there, and it's a glass fermenter. We'll be able to see. You'll be able to see what's going on with it. And if it's in a bucket or whatever and you can't see inside of it, the same thing is going to be happening there. It's going to just build up foam. It may blow out a little bit. If you have a larger bucket, it may not blow out any foam, but I suggest you use a blow-off tube so that you don't have any problems, because it could blow off foam out into your ferment lock and make a mess, and you don't want to deal with that. But anyway, just relax. Don't worry. Have a home brew, or in your case, if this is your first beer, you don't have any home brew, drink some regular beer and save up some recapable bottles, because you're going to need a bunch of bottles to put this beer, to carbonate this beer later on. So anyway, here we go. We'll just check on that later on tonight or tomorrow. So here we go. This is at about 20 hours. You can see the foam is starting to build up a little bit. You can notice a little bit of brown stuff on there on the top of the kreuzen. Perfectly normal. Maybe see some bubbles coming up. That's what it should be doing, and it's pushing out CO2 as it should. All is well. We'll check on it again when I get home tonight after work. So we're at about 30 hours now since we pitched the yeast. It has not gone up through the blow-off tube yet. It's very close. It's doing what it should. It has those little brown looking spots on the kreuzen. That's totally normal. Don't think it's infected. If you see something like that, it's just what it is. Everything's looking good so far. So today's Tuesday. It's been about 40 hours since we finished this up and pitched the yeast. There's been a little bit of a blowout. I'll just switch that jar. You can see the water. It's a little cloudy, not much blowout happened, but a little bit. So just switch out that jar. It's bubbling away, it's doing its thing. Looking perfect. Nothing to worry about, just leave it alone. Alright, so 2 days later, still doing its thing. Still bubbling. Looks like the foam is maybe starting to fall just a little bit. Switch out the overflow of the blow off, and just leave it alone. Check on it in a couple days. So now we're at 1 week. It's slowed down a lot. The foam has all dropped out, but it is still bubbling steadily. Nothing to worry about. Everything is doing what it should. I will just switch out the blow-off tube for a regular stopper airlock tomorrow. So it's at 8 days fermenting now. So we're going to put it to a switch off the blow-off tube. So you can see there's no more foam. It all fell back down. The krausen fell back down into the beer. It has been bubbling just once in a while. It's basically done. So I'm going to just switch out the blow-off tube to an airlock. I just take some Star Sand. And spray inside the airlock. It's all clean, but just spray some Star Sand on the bottom of that. It's pretty simple. Pop that hose off. Put this one on. And put the lid back on. Good to go. So I am getting positive pressure pushing on the airlock, which it should. It's pushing the, there it just bubbles a little bit, but yeah, so it is still fermenting just a little bit. Time to, we'll check out the directions. Okay, the fermentation should start within 12 to 36 hours. Yet the airlock will bubble vigorously for the first few days, then decrease dramatically as fermentable sugars are consumed. Activity may cease altogether within 1 week. That's been 8 days. It's pretty much done. For best results, allow the fermenter to sit undisturbed for at least 1 week after activity in the airlock has slowed. This will give time for the majority of the yeast and trobe to settle out of the beer, improving clarity when bottled. So that's what we're going to do. We'll just leave this sit for at least 1 week. That's what it says. Let it sit undisturbed for at least 1 week after activity in the airlock has slowed. Okay. Just shut the door and leave that for a week. That's easy to do. You don't want to get too anxious and try to rush things along. Just leave it alone. It'll be great. So that's just what I'm going to do. We'll see you in a week. So it's bottling day. It's been about I think 10 or 11 days since I last checked on the beer. It's all done. It's ready to rock. Anyway. So I got that inside. I got all my bottles ready to go. I've got bottle caps sanitized. Everything's all ready to go. And anyway, so we're going to get this going here. Reading the instructions, it said to wait at least 1 week after fermentation has slowed. So that's no problem. It's been about 11 days, like I said. And now we're moving on. Priming sugar on bottling day. Boil 2 cups of water and and dissolve the priming sugar into it. Cover with plastic wrap and allow to cool before gently stirring it into the beer or adding it to the bottling bucket. Here's our 5 ounces of priming sugar right here. Bottling. There are 2 options for bottling your beer. Either use a bottling siphon to fill the bottles from the fermenter, or transfer the beer from the fermenter to a bottling bucket and filling from that. In either case, the priming sugar solution should be gently but thoroughly mixed with the beer before bottling. I suggest that you do not bottle from your fermentation bucket when you put in the priming sugar, and you want to stir it up a little bit so that it's evenly distributed. You're going to just be lifting up some of the yeast and the trobe off the bottom, and you're not going to end up with the clearest beer possible. So if you have a bottling bucket, definitely do that. Just boil your priming sugar, put the priming sugar into the bucket first, then gently siphon the beer on top of it. It will self-mix, but if it makes you feel better, just a gentle stir with a long spoon to without adding bubbles or aerating it. Just give it a gentle stir, good to go, and then bottle from there. So I got all that is ready to go. It says fill and cap the bottles, leaving about 1/2 to 1 inch of headspace in the bottles. It is important to treat the beer gently during bottling to minimize the oxygen pickup and potential for stalling. Allow the bottles to carbonate at room temperature for 2 weeks before chilling and drinking. The bottles should be stored cold after carbonation to best preserve the flavor. It all sounds perfectly fine to me. These directions are pretty spot on, and like some directions I've seen, you know, other people talking about it and show it on the line and stuff, but some of the directions, it must lose something in translation or whatever, but some of the directions are pretty bad. These have been pretty straightforward. This was the Palmer beer kit. I like it so far, and we'll get to bottling this right now. Yeah, pretty much the same instructions on the bag here. Mix the corn sugar with 2 cups of water and boil for 5 minutes. Pour the solution into the bottling bucket and fill with beer. Okay. So how I do it is just I use the same spring water, Eldorado Springs spring water, about 2 cups. A little more. There's 1 cup. Just over 1 cup. And just under 1 cup. Good enough. It doesn't have to be a precise measurement on that. So around 2 cups. Alright, so that's been boiling now for a few minutes. That's good to go. And have some bottle caps that have been sanitized. Got the bottling bucket is ready to go, and my siphon hose. I do not use a auto siphon. You can, if you have an auto siphon, great. Only thing, when you go to siphon, make sure you leave that layer of yeast and trobe behind. Try not to get it down inside there, where it's going to be sucking that yeast off the bottom of your carboy or a bucket, fermenter bucket. Or if you have a bucket that is, like if you have a bucket that has a spout on the side, great. But just try to make sure it's high enough that the flow isn't, when you open up the valve to transfer it into your bottling bucket, make sure it's not sucking up a bunch of that yeast and trobe off the bottom. You want as little as possible in the beer, so we're good to go. We'll get this. I'll get that shut off. The only thing about the directions that I think is not necessary is letting that cool off a bunch. I just leave it cool off a little bit, and then dump it right in the bottling bucket and siphon on top of it. Like I said, it will self-mix, but we're going to use a large stainless steel spoon to give it a gentle stir, just to so we feel better about it. But anyway, here we go. We're all ready to rock. Okay, so that's the priming solution has cooled off a little bit for just a few minutes. Just put it right inside the bottling bucket gently. And I have the my siphon hose is full of water. And you just stick that down in there. I can see the hose. The end is right there. So let the water drain out. Got beer flowing. We're going to take a sample for a hydrometer reading. As you see, I'm using sanitized nitrile gloves. How I sanitize them is use rubbing alcohol. Spray rubbing alcohol on it. And we get that inside there. And siphon on top of the priming sugar solution. So just gently siphon that on top, and you can see, maybe you can see, the end of the hose is right here, not sucking up anything off the bottom. Probably get that down a little farther. There we go. Oh, that's pretty good right there. And once it's about to the end, I'm going to tilt it a little bit, try to get as much beer as possible out of there, and proceed bottling. Everything is real easy so far. The beer looks real nice. Nice and clear. It's got a good color to it. See on top there was nothing, no more foam or anything on there. Maybe just, I don't see any foam on there. I see some specks on the glass. But yeah, it's looking as it should. Everything is just perfect. So getting a hydrometer reading on there, I think the instructions say it should end up around a 1.012. We're at a 1.0. It's hard to see on this camera, but 1.016, it looks like 1.016. That's fine with me. I mean, if it doesn't attenuate like the directions say, that's fine. That's nothing to worry about. So if I remember correctly, we didn't get a good reading on what it started out as, but it should be pretty much real close to in line with what the directions say, is since it was a extract kit, so it's already, the efficiency is already figured in. So, but we'll get a taste. Well, it smells good. Very smooth. Yeah, a little grainy, a little bit of a hop bite to it. Nothing real strong, but that's good. No, it's not like a German wheat beer. It wasn't a wheat ale yeast used, but so there's no banana or clove or anything like that. But that's real smooth, very drinkable beer so far. We'll see what that looks like in a couple of weeks when we open these bad boys up. Meantime, that's siphoning as it should. Everything's looking fine. So as that's getting close, to being to the end, I'll give it a little tilt here. Try to get as much beer as possible without sucking up. Pull this back a little bit without sucking up any of the yeast and trove off the bottom. There's going to be some left behind. I have 48 bottles to fill up. If I need a couple more, I can sanitize a couple real fast and fill as many as possible. It's usually right around 2 cases of beer, give or take a few. There we go. This is about a done deal here. I'm going to call that good. then what I'm going to do is I have the stainless steel spoon. Wipe that off with some rubbing alcohol to sanitize it. Let that dry. I like the alcohol because it flashes dry pretty quick. And then very, like I said, it will self-mix. But if you want peace of mind, very gentle stir. Not creating any bubbles, any splashing. I did create a couple bubbles, but it should be fine. So now we're ready to rock. We'll get some bottles filled up right now. So with clean and sanitized gloves, I'm ready to start bottling this beer. There we go. Try not to get a bunch of bubbles in there. However you fill it up is fine. If it's coming out of spout, they can turn on and off. And fill them up to about an inch from the top of the bottle. Very simple. Goes pretty quick. There you go. So just put these aside. Oops, I missed one. Put those aside and continue on. So there we go. I ended up filling up 49 bottles. I got to put the caps on them. And now I'm just I haven't capped them yet. I just covered them up with the caps, and now I just cap them all and put them back in the 6-pack holders. So that's all done. I have all the bottles are capped, ready to put away. I'm going to put them in a closet. And here's the total loss of beer we have. So it was 49 bottles and a couple ounces of beer. 4 ounces of beer, whatever. And then whatever's left in here in the carboy is the yeast and a little bit of beer. So no big deal. Not bad, 49 bottles, and we're going to put those away and check on them in 2 weeks. Alright, so we're at 2 weeks now. Let's check this out. It does have a little bit of a chill haze to it. See if it's carbonated. Oh yeah, it sounds like it. And then when you're pouring your beer, it's our bottle conditioned beers. They're always going to be a little bit of yeast just on the very bottom. Not very much, not even a 1/4 inch, less than that. If you are careful and not suck up a bunch of the trove off the bottom of your fermenter, you're not going to have very much sediment in your bottle. Just what yeast was in there. Kind of carbonated the beer and it settled out. So you're always going to have just a little bit of yeast on the bottom. That's what you do when you're pouring your beer. Just carefully pour it without gluck, 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 gluck. And keep pouring until you start to see the yeast come loose and come out towards the bottle. Here we go. And I lost maybe a 1/4 inch. But there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't want it in the beer. I mean, it's perfectly fine to drink it. It's mostly vitamin B. A little yeasty, not bad. Anyway, Came out good. It's carbonated. It's bubbling up the side. Like I said, it does have a bit of a chill haze to it. Smells good. Grainy and hoppy. Not too hoppy. A little bit of hoppiness on the back end. Not bad. Yeah, that's very smooth. I highly recommend these Palmer, what is it called? Palmer's Premium beer kits. The directions were right on, and it was very, very simple to make. If you just have patience to let your beer sit in the fermenter, like it said, about a week after it's done fermenting, very important to end up with a better quality beer. Don't try to rush it. And then it's also important to let it sit for at least 2 weeks to a bottle condition. It doesn't have a whole lot of carbonation. It has just enough carbonation. It tastes real good. It's got the good mouth feel to it. I really like it. So there you go. First beer is super easy. Just have some patience. Follow the directions. Like I said, I highly recommend these Palmer Premium kits. Maybe go out and get you one of them and go from there. Remember, brew what you like what you brew. I'll see you next time inside Home Brewing.
Gee.